I'll just say that I think there's I had a revelation myself, spending time in St. Louis, Green Bay, Wisconsin, Tulsa, Hot Springs, Arkansas, doing the work of the Pachamama Alliance in communities, Omaha, spent some time in Omaha. People are conscious. People are massage therapists. They meditate. They read Eckhart Tolle. They have retreat centers. I think we don't recognize or affirm that there are hundreds of millions of people. They don't talk like us, they don't dress like us, but they are conscious. And I was humbled, a little bit ashamed and embarrassed that my consciousness about them was so blind until I really spent time working with them. I had an opportunity, there's a guy named Bob Chapman who runs a company called Barry Waymuller, and he has a university inside of his, he owns 82 manufacturing companies. The companies make things like beer bottles and potato chip bags and the machines that roll the toilet paper. These are the companies that he owns. So they're, it's stuff. And the people in these companies, I went to a factory that was making the machines that make the toilet paper rolls, okay? So it's real glamorous. There were 800 people, welders and people, in overalls and in the big production floor. They were all completely fired up because this company provides communication courses for them, the culture of service courses for them. They now provide the Awakening the Dreamer Symposium. One reason I was there is they're incorporating the Pachamama Alliance stuff in their factory. It just blew my mind. It was like I thought I was in Marin County, and I just want to say there are people like that, and they're everywhere. And I think there is a little bit of an arrogance on the coasts, in the middle of the country's all red and stuff. I think that's a misunderstanding, so I just wanted to say that. I don't know, I can't remember what your question was, but it prompted me to tell that story because I was humbled and so inspired by these people. And they were kind of overweight and, kind of like awkward, but they were awakening more, and it was the most exciting thing in their entire lives. So I just want you to know it's happening.
Would they necessarily be voting for Trump?
Well, they were really, jobs were the most important thing in their lives, making sure that people had work, and why they want work is so that they can make a contribution with their life. It's not only about money. It's about being able to do something that's useful. It's about making a difference. It's about being seen and being and mattering. Everybody wants to matter. So that's what I saw and experienced, and they may have voted for that. Who knows? I don't know. I didn't talk to them about that.
All right. I see lots of questions. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take some questions, but we're not going to answer them right away. So just one quick question with an interrogative, put it in the air. They're going to listen to this, and we're going to take 4 or 5 and just hear the questions without answering them, but quick. How do you save the world? Whatever it is. Fast question, and then they're going to make their final statements and kind of assess whatever question they feel most inclined to answer. Tom.
How do we develop a new paradigm, populism, that overcomes educational elitism in this country?
Excellent. How do we overcome educational elitism? Another burning question, right here.
Yeah, how do we, when you mentioned being stuck in the echo chamber of our own thoughts, is that some sort of physical stuckness? Are we stuck in a bubble somehow of our own thoughts? Echo chamber, I like that. Thank you.
Okay, how do we burst out of that? This gentleman Go ahead, and then we'll take one over here.
So how do we separate reality and fantasy in the media?
Okay, media, education, breaking out of our box. Sir, you have.
Stephen Ellinger. You talk about a new narrative, and so let's assume we have that narrative and we all agree on what that narrative is. What is the vehicle for that narrative to, come into the hearts of humanity? Because it seems the landscape for that, or the vehicles historically, whether that was educational institutions or religion or that, what is that vehicle today to get that narrative, into the hearts of humanity?
Great questions. We got any over here? This side's kind of quiet. Sir.
Does what happened recently really foster the death and rebirth of institutions, or has it set us back another 40 years?
That's a great question.
Okay.
Yes.
How can, Norman, how can liberals start listening to conservatives deeply and considering that they're people with valid ideas, and specifically the historical devaluation of men that is both overt and subtle in our culture, and especially our leftist culture?
Okay, thank you. So we've got one more, last one.
Many of our youth are disenfranchised because they feel like many of the rigged systems that are based on lies, blatant lies, are hard to swallow, and many of them have become so disenfranchised that they're committing suicide. What kind of policies or ideas might you have for them? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Some deep, serious, profound questions. And you each have 3 minutes to answer. I'm glad you came to my So you can pick up on any of them, the general drift, however, sort of 3 or 4 minutes closing thoughts on these questions at the
Well,
end.
great question. How do we deliver the narrative? Esalen, our new chairman of the board, Jeff Kripal, I don't know how many of you read his books, but he's focusing on the imagination and literature, and particularly the whole advent of what he calls the super story, with all these superheroes. So it's you can read his books, and he's become he has a following in the Hollywood community now, and of course they're making a lot of money off these big super stories. So how to elevate the super story from Batman and Superman to Doctor Strange, who's right in there right now, and but from Doctor Strange there's going to have to be another graduation, but thereby lies the story. How to the way the great narratives of the world appeared was in the Paleolithic, when all our ancestors were these wandering groups, 30 to 60 people, for these hundreds of thousands of years, and gathering around the campfire and tell the old story again, and it elaborated and grew, and it was driven to a huge part by shamans, probably 50, 60,000 years ago. So anyway, the artist is shaman, and the Hollywood's catching on to this, and so that's one way I could see this happening. So some of us are trying, hanging out with screenwriters to kind of elevate, these war games into the games of enlightenment. And another one that's really afoot right now is how this whole narrative is appearing in the world of sport. And if one of my dear friends is Pete Carroll, the coach of this Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
So they got a core on the team there that's really into this stuff. But the sports writers don't get it. It's part of the envy culture that sits in our media and this reductionistic side of the media. I think that something's gonna have to be faced exactly, the tear down, the deconstruction. And it comes out of the academic world to a large extent. So last week you may have seen Richard Sherman, the wonderful quarterback, when he came in dressed as a wizard from Harry Potter, and with his wand, and to tell about the game. And the reporters said, two of the reporters, they said, so you, are you telling us, Richard, that you think we're muggles? And he just looked at me. And if you ever seen that face of his, that ferocity, you just looked. Oh yes, no, they knew. They were the muggles. And so they're telling that story. Now, up in Seattle, that's quite a narrative for everyone. Wow, are we muggles? Or can we see the magic? So on Sunday night, for what it's worth, Pete and I traded 2 emails back and forth. And there were 4 or 5 of us going around talking the wizard talk during that incredible game. Now, it's just happening, folks. And it's not just there. Anyway, this is another thing. In other words, how can we tell this narrative in the common life? Through movies and sport, that's going to be one. I mean, there are those kinds of vehicles. So that's one answer.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So when you think about youth and disenfranchisement, and also how do we then take some narrative that, let's say, we are beautifully articulate, and it's just literally next week's is going to release a beautiful 20-minute video. It's going to be the thing. Now, there has to be an invitation into it that feels organic, that it's not a fantasy, it's not actually going to Hogwarts. It's like, oh wait, this is just an extension of what I'm already doing. And I feel that within education, and specifically within religion, there are natural hooks for this type of awakening, where we can empower people with whatever kind of self-awareness work you want to talk about, whether it's purpose discovery, whether it's breaking down limiting beliefs, bring people into the doors of better relationships, better bodies. But there's a huge opportunity to do it. A huge opportunity to bring people into an interactive discovery around what is the new narrative, what does it say about me in my life? How does my guitar solo dance on this bass line? Like, what does it mean? Like, how do I reach my greater fulfillment by being part of this? And we've seen it happen. I mean, people are still reading into Star Wars. People are still reading into The Matrix. We do it all the time. And so the mechanisms are very real. The second point I wanted to make around kind of this Republican progressive piece, and speaking into their listening. Now again, one of the beautiful Trojan horse pieces of this purpose movement of sorts. Again, are we calling it that yet, or no?
Yes, we
We're
are.
calling it.
We can call it that, yes. Global Purpose Movement. Sounds good.
Where's the alliteration?
Yeah,
we'll work on it.
Global good.
But once this kind of soul level identity comes within, right? Now, whatever means you got to get it in there, whether it's through people see something for themselves to have a better career, or a better relationship, or a better body. Once it gets in there, it has this kind of liberating effect, meaning the former identities around politics, race, creed, sex, gender, all that stuff becomes secondary because there's a personal religion that's taken hold. Right? There's a meaning, a reason for it. And so in this sense, like coming alive with your soul's purpose, or with a deep sense of a calling, it's supremely transpartisan. It liberates us from that. And we can begin to relate to each other as who we really are, soul's image, soul's identity. So in terms of mechanisms for bringing the new world forth, the new populism, this really is a deeply democratic thing. This is a tool that we've been waiting for, because it's going to allow us to slough off all this stuff that's just never been us.
Let me think. Well, I think a movement isn't a movement until it starts to see itself. And how that happens is we start affirming and revealing and serving and inspiring that which is emerging. And we've been in a season of criticism and blame and finger pointing, but I think if we can remember that the problems we face today, there's no Gandhi coming or Martin Luther King coming. It's a collective wisdom that's going to resolve what we face. It's the only way through. It's all of us. It's really up to us. And if we're willing to see, and it's clearly not going to be up to the new president-elect. Obama couldn't do it. It's up to us. And I think if we're willing to affirm and reveal and serve that which is showing up, that we love, that we care for, that we resonate with, that makes a movement because you're moved by it. A movement is different than a campaign. You can't force it. It needs to be, it comes from the heart. A real movement comes from the heart. And, we've lived through and seen incredible movements in our lifetime, incredible successful movements that I think Esalen had a whole lot to do with, just incredible movements. Who can't remember if you were alive when the Berlin Wall fell, it was, oh my God. And then the end of apartheid and the women's movement, and it's just awesome what's happened. The environmental movements like that. I think it's working. So I think what we want to see is what's working and affirm it and allow it to grow by appreciating it. I say in my book, what you appreciate appreciates. What you appreciate appreciates. That's the way to make it grow. And then I want to say this other thing. It is so good. What was it? Oh, I know. I want to tell this prophecy. This is a little bit of response to you about the thing about men and women. There's a really cool Native American prophecy. I have to use my arms, so you're going to have to hold my microphone here. So there's a Native American prophecy about this time in history that says that humanity, it's a metaphor, humanity is the bird of humanity has two wings, a male wing and a female wing. And that for centuries, the bird of humanity has been flying primarily with the male wing. The female wing, the feminine wing in all of us hasn't been fully extended. And so the male wing has had to be very athletic and has become overdeveloped and has had to become violent. And the bird of humanity has been flying thus in circles. For centuries. And in order to keep the bird of humanity flying and above ground, the male wing has done all this work and has had to become violent. While the female wing, in the prophecy says in the 21st century, the first 100 years of the third millennium is the prophecy, the female wing, or the heart wing, or the feminine wing, or the yin wing of humanity will fully extend. The male wing can relax a little bit, and the bird of humanity will soar.
Flying straight line.
That's a great thing.
And it doesn't make men wrong or women right or any of that. That prophecy, it talks about the yin and yang in all of us. And I say that to say that my way of talking about the 21st century, it's the Sophia century. It's the century where we'll actually begin to recognize that knowledge, as powerful as it is not useful unless it's coupled with true wisdom. And this is the 100-year cycle, I think. If you think of it as the beginning of the third millennium, we're only 16 years in to this 1,000-year cycle. How are we going to define the first 100 years of the third millennium? What's it really going to be like? And if we think about that, we know that the choices we make, I think, at this time, will determine the future of life for the next 1,000 years. And that's not a burden. That ennobles us. that gives us the opportunity to live the most meaningful lives any generation of humankind has maybe ever lived, because we now know that we have that impact. We know that we matter that much. And that's a kind of consciousness that's so inspiring to me. And I think if we live into that, we may not see these great things we're talking about in our lifetime, but that's okay. We will have made a contribution to it, and that will give our life the kind of meaning we dream of.
Thank you, Michael, Lynn, Brandon, for sharing your wisdom, taking your time, and being with us here tonight. It's been truly extraordinary. My heartfelt gratitude to all three of you for being here. Let's get them up. Thanks, Michael. These are extraordinary times by whatever name they go. New paradigm populism might be in the air. Global purpose movement might be on the move. It doesn't matter what we call it, who leads it, and how it goes, because it will go. It is that bird of humanity flying with both wings now in full force. And we know it. It is that inspiration that has been mentioned here so many times. It's the knowledge deep in our heart that we are an evolving species, that we are taking a quantum leap into the future. And a few small administrative miscues here and there will do very little to break the indomitable will of human decency and the Great Spirit in all of us. And it only serves as a wake-up call of how much more we have to do. And in the indigenous wisdom, they've said, there were three great miracles in the history of the universe. The beginning, the appearance of life on earth, the appearance of self-reflective human consciousness. And now we are in the midst of that fourth great miracle, the transformation here and now of human society that will affect us for thousands of years to come, that will set the precedent for a truly new, higher morality, higher principles, based on the will and the driving force of the human heart. And if Margaret Mead once said that don't doubt that a small group of like-minded people can't change the world because that's the way it's always been done, we can take that right down, knowing the power of our human potential, the deep-seated understanding of our ecology, and finding our purpose, and say to ourselves, never doubt that every individual in this room cannot transform the world, because indeed, that's the way it's being done, right here and now. Thank you for joining us here tonight in launching New Paradigm Populism, Global Purpose Movement. Call it whatever you will, just act it out. Be it, be that change. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks to our presenters and everyone for being here. I think there's still some wine and goodies in the other room there, and we've got about a half an hour or so to visit. So enjoy yourself, and look forward to seeing you sometime soon. Thank you.
Yeah.
So strong together.
We're gonna do it. Awesome.